the future with 41-year-old George Foreman. After a 10-year layoff, Big George has 21 consecutive wins on a comeback trail that up to now has seen him cutting down insignificant timber. He's big and strong, though, and still powerful, and it may well be time to start taking George Foreman seriously. An intriguing heavyweight double feature tonight on HBO. We are live at Caesars Palace in Las Vegas, Nevada, where first tonight you'll see a heavyweight fight in the never-ending comeback of George Foreman as he takes on his first top 10 opponent, Adilson Rodriques. That bout is scheduled for 10 rounds. Then, former heavyweight champion Mike Tyson returns to the ring to face an old nemesis, Henry Tillman. That, too, a fight scheduled for 10 rounds. We are in the outdoor arena at Caesars, where so many major events have taken place in years past. Duran, Leonard, Hagler, Hearns, Holmes, all the great champions of the 1980s fought at this historic site. Ironically, two who have not performed on the outdoor stage at Caesars are Tyson and Foreman. And tonight, for the first time, this arena opens up in a carnival atmosphere for two non-title fights. The eyes of the world, nevertheless, focus here on this ring and on two heavyweight fighters as they try to resurrect their careers. Hello again, I'm Jim Lampley, and we welcome you here for a heavyweight doubleheader which says a great deal, pro or con, as you may choose, as to the state of affairs in boxing's heavyweight division. And on a weekend when the NBA playoffs are no longer ongoing, and when many of you sports fans might be looking for something a little more pulse-quickening than 18-hole coverage of golf, a little bit higher scoring than World Cup soccer, well, here we are. The last time we came to the outdoor arena here at Caesars, it was a year ago to watch Sugar Ray Leonard in his second battle against Tommy Hearns. Tonight, Sugar Ray wears a tuxedo and works with us. And we look at Mike Tyson up the road a little bit. Sugar Ray, what is it that he will be looking to find out about himself tonight?
Well, the loss that Mike Tyson suffered at the hands of James Buster Douglas was not just a physical loss, but an emotional loss. Who was to blame, Mike Tyson or his corner? That's the big question. So it really doesn't matter who he's facing tonight. I think this is just a reassurance for Mike Tyson himself to see what's left.
So despite the fact that Henry Tillman is not regarded by many as a worthy opponent, odds flirting right now at about the 17 to 18 to 1 level, you think there's still something to be gained for Mike?
For Mike Tyson, the opponent is irrelevant, although from a promoter standpoint, you want someone of name. But this is a big question that needs to be answered from Mike Tyson.
And those questions will be answered in the second bout of the evening. But the first bout, a little bit of perhaps more comic fare involving the Falstaffian character of George Foreman. And here with more on that, our Larry Merchant. Larry, could you have ever dreamed that you would be watching George Foreman on an HBO boxing bill of fare?
Not in my most terrible nightmares, Jim. But 4 months ago, there was Mike Tyson rolling around on the canvas hunting for his mouthpiece. Never expected to see that. And then we had a wonderful fight between Taylor and Chavez, stopped with 2 seconds left. Never expected to see that. Tonight, I'm just running away to the circus. When George Foreman came out of retirement, what I thought was, well, ex-champions used to put on exhibition tours all the time. And then when people started to take him seriously because they were tantalized by a charming, fat old heavyweight, I just swooned at their gullibility. But here he is, 3 years later, so I have to salute him. Salute him for pulling off one of the great scams in boxing history, which, trust me, is saying a lot. One other thing I didn't expect to see, Jim, a doubleheader, Tyson-Foreman, in which Foreman is fighting the more formidable opponent.
Indeed, the most formidable opponent of his 22 so far in this particular comeback. But despite the apparent flimsiness of Foreman's credentials against 21 questionable opponents, public opinion shows that the general public is intrigued by his entertainment value and not terribly worried about George Foreman's health. And he has generated this broad appeal in large part by creating, in his second boxing life, a whole new persona.
This is Big George Foreman, the only boxer preacher who's above 40 and active in the world of boxing. What makes my career a bit more different than your ordinary boxer is that I've got to go out there and prove to the whole world that the age 40 is not a death sentence. And two, that there's no complications, no contradictions in a boxer being a preacher too. There are all barriers, a lot of barriers that can stop me, but my age, you'll find, will be the least of them. In 1967, I had my first boxing match. I won it by knockout. It inspired me to go on to be a Golden Glove champion in San Francisco, and then in 1968, making the Olympic team. When I won the gold medal in 1968 in Mexico City, it was the greatest event athletically in my whole life. There has never been anything to even top it in the world of sport. A happy day for George Foreman. I stood and I waved a small American flag because it wasn't a protest nor an anti-protest. I just wanted everybody to know that I was from the United States of America.
A lot of men have fell and stumbled because they met Big George in that old square jungle.
It wasn't too long before I was the #1 contender. I was about to face Joe Frazier in Kingston, Jamaica.
Frazier's knees buckled. He is about. He is down.
6 knockdowns. Can you imagine George Foreman, a guy who was maybe 5-1, 6-1 in some places, knocking Joe Frazier, the great Joe Frazier, down 6 times? I couldn't believe it either. A great champion, but I caught him a little off by surprise. He thinking, underrating George Foreman, I became heavyweight champion of the world. Then came the fight in Zaire. It's Muhammad Ali against George Foreman. What should I do? People are telling me, don't hurt Muhammad Ali, and I'm thinking that's what I specialize in. But if he be a good boy, I won't hurt him, I'll only knock him out. Then, after 7 rounds, listening constantly to Muhammad Ali telling me that, well, that's all you got? That's all you can do, George? I'm lying on the canvas thinking I was devastated, embarrassed before the whole world. After becoming #1 contender again for the championship of the world, I had one stop-off, Jimmy Young, same one, Puerto Rico. I lost that fight, a 12-round decision, but going back into my dressing room that night, starting to cool off, I had another experience. I met up with something I never thought that I would ever meet up with, a vision of death. In a split second, I was out of this world, back alive again in the dressing room, screaming that Jesus Christ was coming alive in me. This vision not only scared me, but it brought me to heart about there's other things other than fame and fortune. How about a creator somewhere out there who had his eye on me all the time? I was alive, but I had to go tell this story for 10 years all over the world about how Jesus Christ had touched my life. Then in 1981, we founded the Church of the Lord Jesus Christ right here in Houston, Texas.
The proof that you love Jesus Christ is that you love the one that died on the cross for us.
Amen. In this church, we found that the highest calling that you can get is to mop the floor, sweep the bathrooms, pass out Bibles, stack them up, see that the church is neat at all times. And the one who do that the most, he's the highest preacher around.
He must be telling the truth because he don't even have to waste his time and come here. He could do other things. He have money. He could be other places, but he's somewhere trying to help somebody. And I think that's very nice.
He's for real. He's a good guy.
I had to do more. And that's why we have the George Foreman Youth and Community Center, a happy medium where kids can come and not even hear a sermon or anything about religion, but I can show them that I care about them. And we can provide role models for them. We can prove for a fact that everybody's not out there stealing stereos.
Remember, the more relaxed the show lives, the less tension, the less you get tired. Make it as natural as walking down the street.
It was near Atlanta, Georgia, 1987. I was out seeking money, donations, for the George Foreman Youth and Community Center. Then I decided right there on the spot, this is not the way to do it. It sounded like I was begging for money to help kids. I said right then, I know how to get money. I can become a boxer again. And on the road to the title, there are a lot of people over 40 who are pulling for me. In actuality, they're pulling for themselves. I've got to be successful to show them that if you're 40 and above 40, they can use the word potential. And in the end, that's what it's all about. It can happen. I didn't come back for the Cadillac in the window, one big payday. I came back to be heavyweight champ of the world.
Part of George Foreman's odyssey in this comeback, up and down the scale, Larry Merchant.
Yes, his first return fight, he weighed 267. Here he is 3 years later, 263. you've heard of the diet formula, what is it, Slim Fast? I think
Fast.
George has developed Slim Slow.
George's comments on the subject: when he was a boy, he was hungry. Now that he can afford it, he wants to have food. Thus, scenes like yesterday's weigh-in.
George Foreman weighs in at 263 pounds.
It was far and away the biggest moment of an otherwise uneventful weigh-in for both of these heavyweight bouts. And now, Adilson Rodriques, the Brazilian fighter whose biggest public appearance in the United States prior to this was a second-round knockout loss to Evander Holyfield, comes into the ring.
You have to feel that George Foreman allowed himself to be matched with this man because he comes out of his own. George Foreman's central casting. Foreman figures he doesn't take a punch that well, he doesn't punch that well, he doesn't move that well. He's got the whole package, but he has beaten a few recognizable names in the heavyweight division: Bone Crusher Smith and Quick Tillis, which is a lot more than any of Foreman's earlier opponents have done.
A look at Rodriguez' record, and of course you saw his one other large asset preceding him into the ring, the man in his corner, Angelo Dundee, who was the trainer in the opposite corner when George Foreman first lost a professional fight back in Zaire in 1974. What will Adilson Rodriques have to do against Foreman and vice versa? Ray Leonard's tip of the night.
Oh, Jim, this is elementary. For George Foreman, first and foremost, he must establish that strong jab because it's like a bomb, because he's so heavy-handed. And George must use that 263 pounds of flesh to out-hustle and out-muscle Rodrigues. Just beat him to the punch, make it a physical fight. Now, Foreman hates movement because he can't get set. So for Rodrigues, he must make George Foreman work. Make him work every round, every minute of every round, until George is no more. Because this heat here becomes a factor also. A good matchup.
And we widened the camera lens out just a little bit now to make room for the next man into the ring, 41-year-old George Foreman.
Humming to himself, and he will be greeted by a great cheer. Everybody likes a jolly fat man.
Well, one thing people love about him, you saw right there, the highest knockout percentage in the history of all heavyweight champions, 91.2% knockouts. He had extremely heavy hands in his first incarnation as a heavyweight champ, and that's one element of his game that has not changed a bit. 20 knockouts in 21 fights since the comeback began in 1987.
You my eyes now here.
Okay, I got you.
HBO market research in anticipation of booking this bout demonstrates that George Foreman is, among women in the United States, far and away the most popular boxer. More popular than the man who's number 2 on the list, Sugar Ray Leonard. Sorry, Ray.
Oh, that's okay. I take my hat off to George.
Well, he's been making the talk show circuit for the last 2 years, and I have to think that has something to do with it. And now the crowd responds to George Foreman.
You know, George is a man on a mission. I mean, although he's 40 years or 41 years old, he's out there to win the title back.
I figure Foreman is a sort of combination of William Perry and Nolan Ryan and Roseanne Barr.
And there are people out there that live vicariously through George.
The most remarkable thing about Foreman really is the transformation of his personality and character. He reveled in being another Sonny Liston when he was a young man, a real angry, uncooperative human being.
66 victories, only 2 losses in his career, to Muhammad Ali in Zaire, and 2 years later to Jimmy Young in San Juan, Puerto Rico. It was at that point that he had a religious experience and became a Bible-thumping preacher. In Foreman's corner, one of the greatest figures in the history of the sport.
The great Archie Moore. Foreman said of him that he makes you feel like a green plum in a tree, not ripe to fall off. And of course, The reason for that is Archie Moore fought well into his 40s. A great, great man, an original character. Look at that record. When I was a sports writer in Philadelphia, Jim, he used to write 8, 10-page letters to me from San Diego.
Filled with wit and wisdom. Now he whispers that wit and wisdom to George Foreman, who enters the ring 9 years older than his opponent. And Rodriques is no spring chicken by heavyweight standards. Foreman with advantages in height. He's 44 pounds heavier and has 7 inches more reach.
And the punch that numbers for whatever they're worth, because these numbers were garnered in a fight that Foreman knocked out Cooney, while Rodriques was knocked out by Holyfield. But you saw that Rodriques made a bad mistake against Holyfield. He was too active. He has to be less active in this fight. And there you see their jabs. Rodriques can throw a jab, and Angelo Dundee wants him to keep throwing the jab and keep moving.
The rules are those of the Nevada State Boxing Commission. 3 judges scoring on the 10-point must. No standing 8 count. You can be saved by the bell in the last round only. By far the most significant rule by our lights for these bouts. The 3 knockdown rule is in effect. Now let's go up to ring announcer Chuck Hull for the pre-fight introduction.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Caesars Palace Sports Arena, where tonight Don King Productions, in association with Caesars Palace, presents The Road Back, an evening of world-class boxing. These bouts are sanctioned by the Nevada State Athletic Commission, Dr. James Nave, chairman. The commissioners at ringside tonight are Dr. Elias Ghanem, Dwayne Ford, Jay Nady, and Luther Mack. The executive director of the Nevada State Athletic Commission is Chuck Minker. The officials assigned by that commission for the next bout of the evening, the judges will be Bill Graham, Dave Moretti, and Jerry Roth. The timekeeper is Mike Lachella. Counting at the knockdowns, Al Bisick. The attending physicians at ringside, Drs. Flip Pomansky, James Game, and William Berliner. And your referee is Carlos Padilla. This is the co-main event of the evening. 10 rounds of boxing in the heavyweight division. Introducing, in the blue corner, fighting out of Sao Paulo, Brazil, weighing in at 219 pounds, with a professional record of 36 wins, 3 defeats with 26 KOs. He is the South American heavyweight champion. Ladies and gentlemen, here is Jose Adilson Rodriguez. And in the blue corner, from Marshall, Texas, weighing an even 263 pounds. His professional record consists of 66 wins, 2 defeats with 62 KOs. He is a former heavyweight champion of the world, George Foreman.
Okay. That robe looks like it could cover Albania.
Okay, Rodriguez, George, you were already given instructions in the respective dressing room. Any question?
None.
Okay, seconds, come out fighting.
George stooped while the referee was giving instructions to fight with his height.
Rodriguez has to fight this fight like a gambler with loaded dice who refuses to bet. He's got to be very conservative and try to stretch it out.
Wonder if that's what Dundee was whispering to him there as they prepared to move to the center of the ring. Of course, the robe has already covered something here that's bigger than Albania, Larry. It brought him into the ring. Rodriguez looked terrific for much of the first round against Holyfield. Then he got rocked with a right hand in the second round and went to sleep. And he initiates most of the action to begin against Foreman. George will take his time.
I don't think Rodriguez is going to be too effective being mobile. I think his best bet is pretty much not to move as much and try to land some stiff punches. On the move, he doesn't have as much leverage behind his punches. You know, it's a lot of slapping blows.
Well, in the early going, he's been pretty accurate with the jab. He's gone to the body a couple of times. That's not hard to find. Rodriguez's body isn't all that hard to find either.
Well, George Foreman is trying to get that jab off. I tell you, his defense is very, very unique. Reminds me a lot of Ken Norton, although George covers up a lot more body.
George likes to deny that he has any particular strategy in the ring. He'll say that that defensive posture is just to make his opponent think a little bit. But it proved effective against Jerry Cooney, at least in the second round when he knocked Cooney out. And it presents an unusual picture to an opponent. George crossing his big arms in front of his body a lot.
The way a man can connect with George Foreman is to throw double left hooks to the body, to the head, or to the head, to the body. Because, again, the way George protects himself, his defense, while he protects one part of the body, the other body is exposed.
George, for the most part, has been a little short with the jab. Rodrigues has landed several to the left side of George's face.
Oh, no, step up, step up, step up.
George is so economical in the ring. I mean, he doesn't really waste anything, although I don't think he can afford to waste anything at this particular weight.
Put it up.
But he takes his time and he lands those big punches, like the jab there.
Okay, no.
And as one Kevin Rooney pointed out, and I think it's a good observation, exceptionally calm. He looks as though he's engaged in some accounting business rather than boxing.
Put it up.
That was a good round, I thought, for Rodrigues. Let's see if he can keep it up. George Foreman stands up in his corner. He said he isn't wed to the idea. He just feels more comfortable that way. And watching this fight in his locker room, the once and perhaps future champion.
Round two begins. George Foreman in the blue trunks, Adilson Rodrigues of Brazil in the white. Rodrigues at one point had risen to become the #3 contender in the eyes of 2 of the 3 world governing bodies. That was prior to his second round knockout at the hands of Evander Holyfield.
You know, George Foreman does some weight training for his arms, and it bulges up his arms to protect that body, that midsection.
George seems mildly amused at the moment by all of Rodrigues' footwork. He's sort of dancing lightly around after him.
Well, he's taking his time.
Okay, bring it up, bring it up.
And he gets an appreciative chuckle from the ringside crowd for the daintiness with which he set up that posture to deliver a punch.
He's very relaxed. I just don't like that hand down. He drops our right hand, George Foreman does. And I don't know whether or not Rodrigues sees that or can do that. Throw the left hook.
Body punches by Foreman. There's already a little bit of soft redness around the right eye of Adilson Rodrigues, and Foreman landed 19 punches in round one. According to punch stat computations, 17 of them were jabs. Foreman trying to come with the uppercut. Angelo Dundee says the biggest mistake you can make against Foreman is to lean over against him and give him a chance to fire the uppercut into your face.
Well, by being a big man, Foreman normally overpowers his opponents. He gets more leverage punching down as opposed to punching upward. The game plan for Rodriques and Angelo Dundee, I'm sure, is to make George Foreman work. And good uppercut by George.
Foreman twice coming up and under with the left hand. And remember, when you're watching George Foreman, you're watching a man who has been known to knock opponents out with glancing blows. His hands are so heavy that what becomes a knockout punch doesn't always look like one, and Rodriques goes down. Case in point.
Well, that's what Rodriques is here for.
He's done his job. 2 minutes and 39 seconds of the second round, and with a series of blows begun by a pair of left-hand uppercuts, George Foreman puts away Adilson Rodriques.
I didn't think George Foreman was hitting that hard when he first made his initial comeback. I figured it was just arm punches, but it's apparent that the man still has power.
Unbelievable power, Ray. As I said, they don't look like knockout punches. He hits you with glancing blows, and the next thing you know, a guy is in serious trouble.
Well, the way he starts off, he throws the jab, the right hand, and it's grazing right hand. That shows how much power. A nice, picture-perfect left foot by George Foreman. But I also believe the lighter George Foreman is, the better he is. He throws better punches, better combinations, with a lot more accuracy.
You'll play hell convincing him of that.
I doubt that very seriously. And here's another shot. George Foreman, wherever he lands a punch, it's able to hurt his opponent. Rodriques backs away, slightly dazed. There's the right hand. Then he comes up with that beautiful left hook.
So at 2 minutes 39 seconds of the second round, Adilson Rodriques has his second round knockout loss against a major American heavyweight contender, and I guess that's what we have to call Foreman now.
I expected more from Rodriques, but apparently George Foreman has much more to offer than we are led to believe, or myself.
Total punches in the bout by punch stat computations. And we told you that Foreman landed 19 punches in round one, but only 2 of them were seen as power punches. The other 17 were jabs. Altogether, he landed 39 punches in the fight, a 60% connect rate. Rodriques was the busier fighter, but once he was in trouble, he stopped punching and absorbed a lot of punishment from Foreman before going down. Right now, let's go up to ring announcer Chuck Hull for the official decision.
Ladies and gentlemen, the time, 2 minutes, 39 seconds of the second round. The winner by a knockout, the former heavyweight champion of the world, George Foreman.
Well, this should be entertaining. Let's go to Larry Merchant with George Foreman.
George, analyze the fight for us. It shouldn't take you longer than the fight.
Well, it's interesting. Whenever you're in the ring with Angelo Dundee fighters, you're halfway scared anyway because you know he's got some trick up his sleeve.
What did you expect?
I expected a lot of movement, which I got. I expected the guy to cover up a little bit more, Adilson Rodriques, than he did. I didn't expect a quick knockout because I figured he'd be moving for 4 or 5 rounds. I'd probably get him about the 7th round. But he started trading punches with me a little earlier than I thought he would.
You've been very careful about picking opponents. I'm told that you study tapes carefully before you get in the ring with anybody.
And if they can whip my mother, they don't go.
Well, in that case, did Rodriques fulfill your expectations of him?
He was a little more punchy, punched a little harder than I thought. I didn't know he would open up with so many punches. He surprised me with that. He'd been hit, lost to Holyfield, and he went over and got a good win in Europe. That kind of bothered me because I knew his timing would be there. But other than that, everything went according to plan.
George, you used to fight everything very hard. Everything you did was intense, Now you seem like you're out for a stroll in the ring. Has that helped you in any way?
Well, I fight so often now, and then if you do it often, you get more relaxed. And I know exactly what I can do and what I cannot do, and I don't try to force things that I can't possibly do. Doesn't matter what people say, I just try to be the best fighter I can. And you get older, you know, I'm about 40 or more, and as you get older, you start getting a little more wiser too. Youth and enthusiasm are great, but age and craftiness is really fine for me.
What do you want to do next? What is the next step in this brilliant campaign of yours?
I hope to think that maybe the winner of this fight tonight and the winner of the next fight with Mike Tyson and Tillman, that they'll match us both together. I think the people really deserve to see a true heavyweight fight now.
If the scenario unfolds with Holyfield fighting Douglas in the fall, and then perhaps one of them wants to fight you, is that okay with George Foreman to fight one of them for the heavyweight title?
I would sure love that. If that's the ultimate goal, to fight for the heavyweight championship of the world. When I do that, then I can go back and be a good farmer and whip up my children. They beat me up now because I can't hit them. They whipping me up. But if I can get that over, I'll just wrestle with my little boys and play basketball and things of that nature.
Just one more thing I want the folks out there to hear from your lips, George. You've got 3 sons named George.
Yes,
George the First, George the Second, George the Third. Now explain why.
I'm Daddy. Then there's George Jr., there's Monk, and Big Wheel, and I love them all. But I didn't want one of them to have a great name, and the other would say, "Why didn't you name me, Dad?" So I decided to start a tribe.
Okay, maybe a George the Fourth is on the way too. And now we're back on the way back to ringside, and Jim and Ray.
Well, Ray Leonard only has one son named Ray, but he has plenty of other credentials to discuss what he just saw. I suppose you'd have to suspect that a few less people are laughing at George Foreman now than was the case 20 minutes ago.
You know what George Foreman is actually doing in America? He's creating marketability and credibility. Forget about who he's fighting. In the fashion that he's able to knock away and do away with his opponents, people start to believe in George Foreman.
Should there be any trepidation at all about the fact that George is 41 years old? Does he really stand to get hurt if he goes up against a Mike Tyson or a Buster Douglas or an Evander Holyfield?
I think someone needs to ask Archibald that same question. Age is in the mind, and I think as long as you take care of your body, George apparently has been preserving his body and his weight, but George does a tremendous job. I'm very impressed.
Does he look to you to be the hardest hitter in the heavyweight division?
No, I still think Mike Tyson and Buster Douglas ranks up there as far as the heavy hitters. But again, Jim, it's deceptive. It doesn't appear like George is hitting hard, but once he hits the guy, he totally paralyzes his opponents.
Well, let's take a look back at second round action, and we'll take a look at the series of punches that led to the knockout.
Well, when George Foreman lands a punch, like it's a grazing right hand, and then he comes back with left hook, that was a lot of power there because he had his whole body, 263 pounds behind that. George Foreman is a big puncher, and it's very hard to gauge whether or not he's the same punch he was as a champion. But here, when he hits his guys, they stand still and they drop.
Let's clarify something you said a few moments ago before we went up to Larry for the ring interview. I think I heard you say that you think George is better when he's lighter, more accurate, more effective with his punches when he's lighter. Did you mean to say better when he's heavier?
Well, he's proven me wrong. I think George is quicker when he's lighter. It proved against Jerry Cooney. He threw more punches, combinations, and the accuracy was there. As he gets heavier, he's a little more lethargic, but he's still effective. But I prefer to see a lighter George Foreman if he should face a Mike Tyson.
Indeed, he was about 10 pounds lighter against Cooney than was the case tonight at 263 pounds. And right now, for a look ahead to what might happen in the heavyweight division in the wake of this second round Foreman knockout of Rodrigues, here is Larry Merchant.
All right, I'm here with those two lovebirds, Don King and Bob Arum, and also with Mr. Henry Gluck, who's the chairman of the board of Caesars. Let me ask you fellas, what do you have planned for Big George next?
Well, I think before we talk about that, I think Henry Gluck has a real momentous announcement that he'd like to make, and then we'll come back to us.
Okay, Henry, what is your momentous announcement?
Well, first of all, the momentous announcement first was to have Don and Bob and Tyson and Foreman all in the ring at the same time. But what they're referring to is we're